All right. So, welcome to the eGAP portal training for the cohort 26 RFA for 21st Century Program Grants. Just to give you a little bit of information to start with, I know that the timeline says that the applications will be available today, and they should be. We've given them the go-ahead to make them public, but last I checked, I couldn't see it myself. If it hasn't been made public yet, it should be done at some point today, or by the time you get in tomorrow, hopefully. We let them know like several hours ago to go ahead and make it live. So um, once it is made live, we do have to upload the documents, the forms that have to go in there. So we're just waiting on that. But you can access those forms and documents on the 21st Century website for now until that has been done. So we totally appreciate your patience. Um, um, Hopefully those will be up in the eGAP document, in the eGAP grant management system as soon as possible. So someone made a comment that summer 25 is there, but cohort 26 is not. So yes, that's what we're waiting on is I knew 25, at least the title had been put in, but was still waiting for cohort 26. So I'm going to try to say this several times throughout this presentation, because my biggest worry is that people are going to fill out the wrong application. But in order for us to get this done in time, we had to rush some things, and so there are actually two different applications that you will see in eGAP once they have been completely uploaded. So let me give you, for those of you who may not have attended past office hour meetings, just to give you a little bit of information. When we first wrote the cohort 26 RFA, it didn't occur to me actually that we would have to do two separate applications within eGAP. And the reason for that is we are doing something this year that we've never done before, and that is specifically offer summer only grants in addition to your regular, academic year or year-long program. And we wanted to make sure those funds would be accessible to subgrantees this coming summer, because we know that you guys are being required to have math and literacy camps during the summer. And many of you may have used, especially if you're an LEA, you may have used ESSER funds last year to support those camps, but those funds no longer exist. And so you may be in the process of looking for other funding sources to help support your literacy and math camps that you have to do this year. And so we wanted to make sure those funds would be accessible. In order to do that, the cohort that is doing a summer only program, if you're applying for summer only programming, then you will actually be, if you get the grant, you will actually have access to funding in early May. If everything goes according to plan, you'll have access to that funding in early May. Early May is still considered FY25, fiscal year 25 funding. And so we are actually going to start the cohort 25 summer grant in fiscal year 25. And so instead of calling it cohort 26 summer, so that it doesn't get confusing for accounting, we had to change the name to cohort 25 summer, because we are now naming our cohorts based on the year that the funding will start, the grant funding will start. So that is the reasoning behind you having two applications, one that's called cohort 20, well, it's actually called 21st Century, 21st CCLC. You have one that's 21st Century CCLC dash cohort 25 dash summer. Those are for people who are only applying for summer only programs. And then you have 21st CCLC cohort 26, and those are for the programs that will be either an academic year or year-long program, and those will start in the fall of next school year. You'll have access to that funding earlier than normal, but your program would actually start in the fall. So please make sure that when you go into eGAP that you're filling in the correct application. Okay, so Spring says that cohort 26 is there. You just have to select 2026 in the dropdown. That makes total sense. Thank you, Spring. So good, the applications are there. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to dive into eGAP. So give me just 1 second to get that set up. All right. Okay. Make it where I can see you guys again. Hold on just a second. Okay. So please excuse me if you ask questions. For some reason, whenever I share my screen, it makes you guys kind of go away. And I'm not able to see your questions and comments. So if you have questions, I'll pause every now and then to see what questions you have, and we will go from there. So please just be patient with me. Okay, now I think I can see your chats. Okay, so this is what eGAP 2.0 looks like. Now today I'm going to be using the test site. This is not the address that you will type in when you go into eGAP. Yours, the actual email address for eGAP is in the RFA. It's also in the timeline. And so this is actually a test site that we use at the State Department level to kind of test things and make sure they work correctly. I'm going to use this site today so that I don't mess anything up under anyone's grants. So when you go to eGAP, it will look very similar to this. It just won't have this information at the top that talks about it being a test site. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in. All right, so today I'm going to work in, well, I'll tell you what. So let me show you so when I go into eGAP, and I'll be honest with you, yours might look slightly different than mine. I see it as an administrator. I'm not sure if yours looks exactly the same when you go in from your point of view. It may only show you items for your school district or for your CBO. I can see items for all of them. So if this part looks slightly different, I apologize. I should have probably gotten with an LEA to get them to send me some screenshots of what exactly it looked like when you sign in. But what I do is go to funding applications, and as you can see here, one of those funding applications, now we're in the fiscal year of 2025, and one of the funding applications that's listed is 21st Century Cohort 25 Summer. And so that is the summer application. Again, if you go to 2026, you may actually have to, I don't know if I can get to that one on the test site. So I don't think I can. So we're going to work out of the 2025 summer one, but they look exactly the same, okay? Which is one of the things that makes me nervous because I'm afraid that people are going to get confused and go into the wrong one. But I will say that if you aren't doing a summer only program, then you will go to your fiscal year, change it to 2026, and then pick the one that says 21st Century Cohort 26, okay? But today I'm going to work out of this 25 summer. And I'm just going to pick a random school district to work out of. So I'm just going to pick Alabaster. Let's see. Let me pick Anniston City. Okay. If you have a CBO that has applied for a 21st Century grant before, you should also be in the system. Let me go back and show you what I'm talking about. You can see here that there are CBOs in here. Foresight Incorporated is probably a CBO. I don't know if I see any other. Alabama State University Aspire program would be considered a CBO. AG Gaston Boys and Girls Club is a CBO. So if you've ever applied before, then more than likely you have an account in here already. And I don't know if it takes you straight to your account or if you can see everyone like I can. Okay. So I apologize for that part. All right. So I'm just going to pick again, I'm going to work out of Anniston City. And this is what you're going to see when you get into the application. So let me walk you through this. You have a history log and you have a place where you can create comments. You do not need to touch either of these right now. If you're ever anytime somebody goes in and makes adjustments or submits anything through the application, it will keep a record of it under the history log. You can also go in and create comments. So if we ask you to do something, you can go in and respond there. But as of right now, while you're doing your application, you shouldn't need to worry about this portion of the eGAP application. You're also not going to worry about allocations at this point. You do not have an allocation at this point. Right now, you're applying to get an allocation. So as of right now, there will be nothing listed under allocations. All right. I'm going to go ahead. In order for you to start making changes in the application, you have to first change your status to draft started. And same with me now. I'm going to go ahead and change this to draft started so that you can see the entire thing. And it just says you're about to change the status to draft started. Click confirm to change the status. I'm going to click confirm. And now I can start my application. If you go under supplemental information, there is a place that's called assurances. Now, you don't have to do anything in the assurances portion. However, it is important that you have read all of these assurances and make sure that you understand them. Because when you submit an application, you are saying that you assure that you are going to do the things that are in this first section. So, for example, says by submitting this application, the applicant assures the project will take place in a safe, easily accessible facility that is conducive to an effective learning environment, local zoning and or safety permit requirements. And then it gives the ESEA section where the law is that talks about this. Under that section is federal and state program requirements. And so again, it says by submitting this application, the applicant indicates an understanding of the following federal program requirements. And the application must include descriptions of all of the following if applicable. And so you can read those. And then by submitting this application, the applicant indicates an understanding of the following state program requirements. So you have federal requirements, you have state program requirements. You need to make sure that you have read all of those. You don't have to do anything on this page. You don't have to check a box or anything like that. But just understand that by submitting the application, when you're finished and you're ready to submit, by submitting, you're saying that you agree and that you understand all of these assurances and program requirements. Anytime you need to go back to the main list of items, you can go here to go to and go down to sections. And it basically takes you back to that original page. All right, subgrantee contact information. So this is the first thing that you're actually going to have to fill out. And you only have to fill it out once per subgrantee. So I'm going to click on that. And you're going to fill in your information. So name of organization, I'm going to assume in this case that it would be Anniston City Schools. All entities should have a UEI number that stands for unique. Unique entity identification number. Sorry, I forgot for a second. All entities should have that, including local and private schools if you're an actual business. So you would fill that in. I'm just going to put in something random right now. You would put in the street address. You're going to put in your city, zip code. I'm making all this up, okay, guys? Your organization's phone number, your organization's website if you have one. So www. Whatever it is, whoever the primary contact name is for that organization. More than likely, it could be your whoever you've decided is going to be your program director could go here. If you're not positive who that is yet, but you still want to go ahead, you do need to know that before you submit your application. But for now, it could be the person that is in charge of the grant or writing the grant. So I'm just going to put any random thing here. Their title. Of course, you're going to fill this out better than I am. Another number, the email address, I'm just gonna put mine. Okay, so this is all of the contact information for the sub-grantee. This is the main person that's on, the main entity or person, well, it would be entity that is on the grant, okay? And then it asks you, does the applicant have a currently funded 21st century program? So your options are either yes, for cohort 16 only, yes, cohort 17 only, yes, both cohort 16 and 17. Right now, those are the only grants that we currently have running, or no. And so you could pick one of those. It doesn't really matter which one. It won't let you pick both, though. It won't, well, in this case, it won't let you pick more than one. So I'm going to say no for now. And then if you have a co-applicant, if you are submitting your application in conjunction with another organization, and you're applying for this grant together, then you would say that you have a co-applicant and you would pick this box and you would basically fill in that same information again for your co-applicant. Now, when I say co-applicant, I'm not necessarily talking about a CBO who has reached out to a local education agency and said, hey, we want to serve your schools. Are you good with that? And y'all have kind of an agreement that I'm going to serve your students and you're going to help provide data. That's not necessarily a co-applicant. It doesn't necessarily mean that that LEA is applying for the grant along with that CBO. You could call them a community partner, but that wouldn't necessarily be a co-applicant. So this is where, if you're trying to get those priority points for submitting a joint application, this is where you would enter the information for your co-applicant or your joint applicant that is submitting with you. It could be that a CBO and an LEA are submitting together. It could be that two CBOs are submitting together. However you want to do it. If you don't have a joint applicant with you, then you would not click that box. So I'm just going to go ahead and close it so that we can go ahead and go to the next screen. Every time you enter things, you need to make sure that you go to the top and hit the save. You can technically click on this and go back to sections, but I always just like to be safe and hit the save button first and then go back to sections. All right. So now we have our sub-grantee contact information in. You will not do anything with new applicant summary. And you do not need to do anything with the checklist. That's something that we use to not score applications, but we use that later on down the line if you get a grant. So ignore that. So the only thing under supplemental information that you need to be concerned with filling out is the sub-grantee contact information. And you need to make sure that you have read the assurances. All right. Okay. So, okay, I see a question pop up. Okay, if the cohort ends this summer in 2025, would you still mark yes that you have a grant? It would not be in effect beginning 2025-26 school year. So yes, if you're cohort 16, you would need to go ahead and mark that you have a cohort 16 grant. It's not going to prohibit you from applying for your program to start at the beginning of the school year. It might hinder you from getting a summer only grant, but more than likely, if you were cohort 16, you probably would not be applying for a summer only grant, so that should be fine. So there's a question, can a co-applicant be another LEA? For example, a middle school and a high school with separate campuses. So probably not another LEA, because more than likely, I mean, I guess you could, but more than likely, your LEA is your school system, right? And so if you're going to serve both a middle school and an elementary school, more than likely they both fall underneath the same school system. So it wouldn't necessarily be two LEAs applying. If that's the case, if you've got an LEA who's applying for a grant on behalf of two schools, then the LEA would be the applicant, and the schools, the two different sites would be the school sites or the 21st century community center sites. Okay. In addition to that, a school can apply on behalf of themselves. Even a local LEA school can apply. So they could, in turn, be a joint applicant with their LEA. But more than likely, that wouldn't necessarily occur. Now, if you're a private school, you would apply just like a regular CBO. You would be considered a private organization and would apply that way. You would still be expected to reach out to the local school system. Please remember that the goal of this is to create a community center, right? And so whether that community center is being started by a public school or a private school, either way, you have to reach out to all of the students that are in that community that you're going to serve. So if you're a private school that is planning on applying for this grant, then you still would need to reach out to the local education agency and offer services to the public school students that are in the attendance area of the place that you're planning to serve. Okay. Now I see lots of questions popping up. I'm going to have to stop answering those right now, or we'll never get through this. So I will come back to your questions after we get a little bit further into the application. Okay, so the next thing you need to do is you're going to go to this drop-down list and you're going to add a grant application. Let me be clear. There's two different things. You've got the subgrantee. The subgrantee is the overall organization that is over the grant, that is receiving the grant. They may receive more than one grant. That subgrantee may decide that it's going to have more than one site or more than one community center. So for every community center they plan to have, they need to add a grant application. Okay. For every individual community center or site they plan to have, they need to add that grant application. So I'm going to go here and add grant application. And then it's going to ask me for the application name. So according to the RFA, the requirement here is that you have 21st century community learning centers somewhere in the name. It can be the abbreviation if you want to. I also wish I had requested this as well. It makes things way less complicated. Is if this site is located at a school, it really does help to have the school name in the application name as well. You don't have to do that. That is not a requirement, but it does definitely make it easier for us to know where that site is located. So sometimes when you come up with these cutesy names for your 21st century program, it gets confusing as to where that 21st century program is actually taking place. So I encourage you, if you can, if your 21st century site is going to be located at a public school or even a private school, go ahead and put the name of that school into your application name. So I'm just going to say here, Rylant Elementary, 21st CLC. So that's going to be the name of this site. So I'm going to hit add application. Now, if I plan to have more than one site for my application, then I would go in and I could add another application. But I could add as many as I need to add. So if you're an LEA and you're planning on submitting an application for 5 different schools, you would enter those 5 different school names here. You would just keep adding a grant application for each of the schools or sites that you plan to have. Okay. For now, I'm going to go ahead and click on Ryland Elementary so I can start filling in information about this particular site. So you have here the budget overview, application details, related documents, and 21st century allocations. All right. You can go ahead and put in your budget if you want to, but for now I'm going to skip the budget. The budget overview is just a broad picture of your budget once you have completed it. You don't need to do anything with that section, but your main application is here in the application details. So I'm going to click on this, and this is where you're going to put the bulk of your actual application, answering those questions that are in the RFA. As you can see, we've got component 1 here. Again, it asks you to put the site's name. Sorry for the duplication of work there, but you would need to put what the proposed name of your 21st century center will be. Remember, it's gonna keep referring to this as a center because these are community centers that you're hosting at potentially schools, private schools, a church, whatever. Okay, so again, I'm going to put Rylant Elementary, 21st CCLC. That's the name of my program. Then I'm going to identify the schools and LEA to be served by this center. So in this case, that site is only going to serve Rylant Elementary School. So I could put Rylant Elementary School. And I think I'm under Anniston City. But let's say that you've got 2 schools that are right there next to each other. One feeds into the other. They have the same common goals, and and you want to combine your sites. Maybe I had someone call last week and ask, well, could we bring kids from the middle school to the elementary school that we want to participate in 21st century? Sure. So I'm going to now serve kids in the middle school as well. So I'm going to put also Rylant Middle School. And again, it's in Anniston City Schools. Of course, you can make this look way nicer than I am. I'm just typing this in to kind of give you an example. Okay. So any schools that you plan to serve by this center that has students that are going to go to this center and be served need to be listed here. All right. Then the next question says, the proposed program center is or will be located in a public school building, private school building, or other. Okay. So unfortunately, in this one, you can select more than one because we wanted to have a drop down. We wanted to have a data information, like an entry box here, and we couldn't make it where you could only choose one. But if you are going to be, of course, at a public school, you're going to click here. If your center is going to be located at a private school, you're going to click here. Let's say it's not going to be at either. It's going to be at a local church. So here you would click other, and then you would put it's going to be at Rylant Fellowship Church. Okay. Also notice under other, it also says, if, so it says, please describe what kind of building the center will be located in and if the center will be housed in more than one building or location. So again, let's say, let's go back. I gave an example of the church. Let me give a different example. Let's say that I'm going to have one grant that's going to cover both Ryland Elementary School and Ryland Middle School. They're not going to actually be in the same building. They're going to be in their respective buildings. So some kids are going to be served at Ryland Elementary, some kids are going to be served at Ryland Middle, but I'm only applying for one grant that's going to benefit both of those schools. And so that would be where I would list this. I would list, Ryland Elementary and Ryland Middle School, because kids are going to be housed in more than one building or location. I've said in past RFA office hours that I feel like it's better for you not to do that if you can help it, but I understand that you've got some really small school systems. You may not have enough kids to justify having just to apply for a grant for each location. You may need to combine your kids together to have enough to give you enough students to serve. So if that's the case, that's fine. Also, again, if you've got one school feeding to another, maybe they're on the same campus, they're just in different buildings, that's fine too, but you would just need to describe that here. So I'm going to go back to putting the church name, or actually I'm just going to change it back to just it's going to be at a public school building. But either way, tell us what kind of building your center is going to be located in. Then what grade levels will the center serve? And so we're going to do K through 5 and 6 through 8, okay, with our elementary and our middle school kids. It could be K-12, just put in the grades that you plan to serve at that center. And then what is the total student enrollment count for the proposed school or schools being served by the center? So this is the number of kids that go to that school during the regular school day. So if it's one school, you would put the number for one of them. If you plan on serving 2 schools with that grant, then you would put the number for both of them. So we'll just stick with the whole theme that we're going with Ryland Elementary and Ryland Middle, and it's 2 schools that I'm serving with one grant. And so I'm just going to guess the 750 kids. Okay. But of course, we don't want you to guess. We want you to find out how many kids go to those schools. And what is the poverty percentage rates for the proposed schools being served by this center? And so I would put Ryland Elementary School is at 55% poverty. Of course, you can type this better than I am. Ryland Middle School is at 65% poverty. Okay, so we list it for any school that's being served by this particular grant. All right, will transportation to and from the center be provided for students? If you do plan to provide transportation, you're going to say yes. If you don't, you're going to say no. So in this case, I'm going to say yes. It also says indicate if schools served are rural or urban. So the way you know if it's a rural school is if it qualifies for Title V funding or REAP funds. Let's say that it is rural. So I'm going to click here. If you're unsure, if you're a CBO and you don't know if the LEA, the school that you're wanting to serve, is rural, call them on the phone and ask them. They should be able to tell you. All right. Has the center or the schools attended by students served by this center received 21st Century Grant funds before? Okay, so sorry I read that kind of sloppy, but it's asking, has this particular center that you plan to create or the students served by this center, have they ever received a 21st Century Grant before, at any time before? So if you put yes, it pulls up another box for you to enter the information into, and you could say back in 2016, we were cohort, whatever that was, cohort 12, and just list all of the previous 21st century grants that you've ever received or that school has ever received in the past. Okay. For now, I'm just going to change this back to no. Again, unfortunately, because we had to put in a data box, it will let you select both, so try not to do that. Okay, so program will occur, and this is where you're going. This is where we need to make sure we're very, very careful, because even though technically I'm in the summer only grant right now, it does give me the choices of year-long, academic, and summer, because again, we couldn't make them different because it would have taken too long, and we wouldn't have had the applications out in time. So for this, in this situation, I'm going to pick summer. I could pick summer only, but we're just going to pretend like we're in either one of the grants. But you could pick whichever one you plan to do. Just make sure that you are in the correct one. If you pick summer only, make sure you're in the one that says cohort 25 summer. And if you pick either of the top two, if you pick year long or academic year only, that you're in the cohort 26 application. Okay. Then you scroll down a little bit more. It says program activities will be held, and choose all that apply. So let's say I'm going to do, let me change this back. I'm going to go to year long. Okay. Just for giggles. Okay, so I'm going to go to year long. That means I plan on doing a program during the school year and during the summer. I'm going to start next school year. And I'm going to do before school, after school, and summer. Okay. Again, you don't have to do before school. Most people just do after school or summer, but you can run a 21st century program if you have it anytime that school is not in session. So you can do weekends, you can do holidays. If you feel like that is a need of the students in your community, you can incorporate that into your program. All right. Again, ask you sort of the same question again. I apologize for the repeat, but we had to make some last minute changes so that you could calculate those two different. So I'm going to say, since I'm doing a year-long program, I'm going to click both of these. Program will occur each academic year. Yes. And program will occur each summer. Yes. Okay. As you see, it now has given me two base calculation areas. And the reason for this was a change to the RFA. We realized that some people do a totally different program during the summer as what they do during the school year. So some sites may only serve, just for example, 75 kids during the school year, but during the summer they serve 150. And it would not be equitable or fair to count the extra kids that are served during the summer for the entire school year. So now you have two separate calculations here. All right, so for the academic year, I'm going to put in the proposed number of students that my program is going to serve each academic year. And so for this case, I'm just going to put 100 students. It could be whatever number that you want. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to do a small number to start with, okay? Just to show you something. Okay, so let's say I'm going to serve 30 students. And I plan to serve those 30 students for the minimum required number of hours during the year, which is 300. That gives me 54,000. So that's great. I can actually fund that. So maybe I need to change that to 25 to show you what I'm saying, but, or 20 kids. Okay. If this amount is less than 50,000, then your program would not be able to be funded. You have to have at least 50,000. Your program has to be, it has to at least serve enough students to get the minimum of $50,000. Okay. All right. So I'm going to change this back to 100. Sorry if I'm rambling. All right. So let's say we're going to serve 100 kids, and we're going to serve them. 300 is the bare minimum. So I'm going to say 457 hours, whatever that calculates to be. So to figure out the hours of your program, you need to know how many hours your program is going to run each day. So if you're running your program from 3 to 5:30 every day, that's 2.5 hours a day, 5 days a week, times the number of weeks that you plan to run your program. And that's where you're going to get this total number here. I don't know why it doesn't let you hit the enter button, but you just have to click on it and it goes ahead and calculates your eligible funding amount for the academic year, which is $274,200 in this case. Now I'm going to put in the number of kids I plan to serve during the summer. So for my summer program, I actually serve 200 kids. And I'm going to serve them, the minimum is 75 hours for a summer program, but I'm going to serve them, we'll say 100 hours during the summer. So we're going to do a 20-hour a week program for 5 weeks. So that's 100 hours. Again, you can't hit enter, you got to click off of it, and it gives you your funding for the summer. Now, you don't have, this is just figuring out your total allocation. Don't get confused. You don't have to only spend 120,000 during the summer and only spend 274,000 during the school year. This is just making our calculation more equitable, okay, or more accurate, I guess you would say. So if you notice, it automatically fills in this area down here. Let me scroll up a little bit. Okay, so eligible amount for academic year, it's automatically filled that box in for the 274,000. For the summer, it's automatically filled that in. So your total eligible funding amount so far is $394,200. And then you have your transportation supplement. If you set above that you are providing transportation, then you will enter in the appropriate supplement. So if you're providing transportation for urban students, you'll put in 10,000 here. If you're providing transportation to rural students, those students whose school qualifies for Title V funding, you would put in 20,000 here. So I believe I said up there that they were rural. So I'm going to put in my 20,000. Okay. Off. All right. So now the total amount that my center is eligible to receive is 414,000 I can't even read. You can see that. $414,200. Sorry. Okay, that is the amount that my program can get. Now, we have had some sites who have previous cohorts say, well, I don't know that I could spend more. I don't know if I could spend that much money. And I really just want to get the same amount that I've always gotten in the past. Well, if that's the case, then you have the ability here to say you want less money than what you qualify for. So if you want the full amount, you'll click the top box, applicant requests the full amount the center is eligible to receive. So you would click this one if that's the case. If that is not the case and you want to request less, it says applicant requests less funding than the center is eligible to receive, place amount in requested box. So when you click this box, it actually brings pulls up a box for you to type the amount that you actually want into it. But it does say, please note that the lesser amount requested will apply to all years of the grant and may not be increased at a later time. So if you decide right now that you only want $200,000 out of this 414 that you're eligible for, 200,000, if that's what you put here, $200,000 is all you're going to get for the next 5 years of your grant. It doesn't matter if your program increases, if it does way better than you expected it to do. You can't go back later and ask for that money back. So think long and hard if you want to request less money, okay? I'm hoping nobody does that, but if you do, then you're welcome to put that amount here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to saying I want my full amount, okay? All right, so this is the full amount. We've had questions pop up. Well, what if I wanted 500,000? That's the maximum amount. I want that. Well, That's tough. Yeah, it goes this year, your funding goes by the amount of kids you plan to serve and the number of hours you plan to serve them. So if you want the full amount, then you need to figure out a way to serve more kids. However, just keep in mind that after the second year of the grant, if you were not serving the number of kids you say you're going to serve, then we're going to reduce your funds based off of the number of kids you are serving. So don't, you might could inflate the number of kids you plan to serve by a little bit because you have goals and you feel like you're going to grow your program by the second year. But if you don't feel like you can do that, if you know that it's not going to be supported, then you just need to put the amount that you know you can serve. Okay, next you're going to put in your cost center through which the funding will be allocated. If you don't know what your cost center is, all LEAs have a cost center. It's a number. You should know your LEA cost center number here, or I guess if you're an LEA, you could put the number. If you don't know what that is, we will, for CBOs, we will assign a cost center number to you. And so we can let you know what that is going to be. But you would just need to reach out to us to find out what that number is. If you have gone in and filled out that form, then we should be able to provide that for you. So just don't hesitate to reach out and let us know if you need to know what your cost center number is going to be. All right, specify how the program will recruit and retain students and staff. Please just put a brief statement here. This is actually was accidentally left behind from previous applications. This is not actually even in the scoring rubric, but I still want you to answer it because remember, we're going to answer every question no matter what. Actually, I need to go back and answer that one. I'm just going to say it's 4, 5, 6, 7. But just put a brief explanation of how you plan to recruit and retain students. And I really would encourage you to put something that's thought out here, but not spend a huge amount of time on it. Because of course I will let the grant reviewers know that this was just a kind of a question that was left behind, but people don't always pay attention. So I would still go ahead and answer it with an appropriate answer and not just, put any random thing just to skip it. But again, don't spend a huge amount of time on this question. All right, next is the competitive priority points. This is where you're going to select the boxes of the priority points that you think you qualify for. If you need an explanation of what those priority points are, they are in the RFA. So please feel free to go read in there as to who qualifies for those priority points. Please be sure that if you select that you qualify for priority points, we expect to see in the application evidence that you do qualify for those things. So for example, if you say that you are going, that you qualify for priority 4 because your center is going to operate a program that's going to focus on middle and high school students, then in your narratives or your other components, you should talk about what you're going to be doing for those middle or high school students. For this one, if you're not going to be in past RFAs, you couldn't apply for this priority if you also served elementary, but in my opinion, that was not fair. So this priority goes to any program that focuses on middle or high school at least half of the time. So if you're serving K through 12, then you would qualify for these priority points. If you're serving K through 6 and 6th grade is considered middle school at your region, you would not qualify for the priority points because you're serving kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, and only one middle school grade, right? So you would want to make sure you're serving the same amount of middle school kids as you're serving your elementary if you want to qualify for these priority points. All right, if you have any questions about any of the other ones, please do not hesitate to send us an email and ask. And now we get into the actual information. I'm just going to enter something here. And you'll notice that if it has a star by it, you have to put something. So, you know, for now, I'm just going to put hello just to fill in a space, but you should have words there. All right, so component 2, needs assessment. I have repeatedly told people that if you want to see what the questions are in the eGAP application, to refer to the grant reviewers scoring rubric. That does show you the breakdown of the questions, but I highly recommend that before you go answer the questions, that you refer back to the main RFA, because it gives much more details about what you should be answering in each of these sections. Also, each of these boxes only will hold 5,000 characters, okay? Again, each of these long answer text boxes will only hold 5,000 characters. And so there were several questions that I tried to break down into parts to make it easier for you to answer the question without running out of space. So that is what has occurred here in like the first several components, is they've been broken down, okay? So component 2 is about your needs assessment. This is where you're going to make a convincing case that your community, your schools, your students, their families have a need for a community center. This is where you're going to talk about how you developed your needs assessment. So if you have the RFA and you go to page 32, it actually talks about what types of things you should include in your description, which is way more involved than these just little bullets right here, okay? So for example, it says explain the needs assessment process and its findings, and specifically include, and then it has bullets under that, and it says involvement of collaborative partners in the development of the needs assessment, which must include when the program development process began, the data and information collection efforts, how the various sources were gathered and analyzed, how the program developed into a defined set of agreed upon needs, forming the basis of the Community Learning Center application proposal. So this is where you're going to talk about, when did you start this step? Did you send out surveys? Did you look at student data? What did you look at to determine what the needs are of, in this case, for 2A, you're focusing on the needs of the community that you're serving and the proposed participating schools. Okay? Down in 2B, it's the same question, but the focus is on the needs of the students to be served and any specific data pertaining to the needs to be addressed, and then the needs of the students' families. And then it says here, needs related to a summer program if such a program is proposed. Now, if you're only proposing a summer program, you're going to answer these same sort of questions in these boxes, but thinking of your summer program only, right? So it's the same questions, whether you're doing a year-long program or whether you're doing a summer program. It just has this bullet about needs related to a summer program. Thinking about those school year, the people who are doing maybe the year-long programs, reminding them that don't forget to put in what you're going to do for your summer schools as well, your summer programs as well. All of that should be answered in both of these, okay? All right, so I'm just going to put something here just so that I have filled something in. Okay, the next question. An after-school or summer program is currently operating at the proposed site, funded by state, local, or federal funds outside of 21st Century. Describe the current program and include the number of students served, the number of paid staff, the source of funding, and how many hours per week the program is operating. Explain how the proposed 21st Century program will operate in conjunction with the existing program. So this question, 2C, only needs to be answered, well, it needs to be answered no matter what, okay? However, only need to give a detailed answer if you already have an after-school or summer program at the school that's funded by something outside of 21st Century, okay? This would include those learning camps and, I'm sorry, the literacy camps and the math camps that a lot of LEAs had to do last year. You would need to mention that. You could mention, in that case, you could talk about how last summer you used your numeracy funds and your literacy funds and also ESSER funds to pay for that. But now ESSER funds no longer exist. And so you're going to now, because those funds no longer exist, you can bring in 21st Century to support those programs. You cannot replace funding with 21st Century funds for existing programs. So for example, if you, let's say you are a private organization, you're a CBO, and you already run some sort of after-school program, you cannot take the money that you used to, whatever organization you went through to pay for that after-school program, you can't stop paying it with that and start paying it with 21st Century funds, because that would be called supplanting. You can't supplant. You can't take a program that already exists and that has been funded through other sources in the past and suddenly start funding it with 21st Century unless those other sources no longer are there, okay? So that is something you have to be very careful about with 21st Century funds. You want to make sure that you're not supplanting and that you're supplementing what is already there. So you would use those 21st Century funds to make the program more robust, to be able to serve more students, to be able to serve them more hours, to be able to provide more programs and intervention materials and that sort of thing. You would need to explain that. Okay, so just seeing some of the intent to applies and some of the questions that have come in, I worry a little bit that some certain organizations may think that this is a way to pay for a program that they already have that's existing, but you can't really do that. You have to just add it to the program that you already have that's existing. Okay. Also but what you can do, I can say this, with 21st Century funds, you cannot charge parents a fee to attend a 21st Century program. So I can say that if you in the past have charged parents a fee to go to the after school program, and now you want to use 21st Century funds instead of that fee, well, because you can't charge a fee with 21st Century, those funds would no longer be accessible, and so you could do that. Okay, you could use 21st Century funds instead of charging parents for their kids to come to after school. All right, I'm rambling. I need to move faster. Okay, so I'm just going to put something here. I just wanted to focus on that one because I want to make sure everybody understands that about the supplanting. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask after this. Okay. All right, I'm just putting something in. Okay, the next component is project design. Okay, this one is probably the thing that you need to spend the most time on because it is very detailed and it's different than it's been in the past. All right, so again, make sure you refer to the actual RFA and that you look for the things that we're asking for you to provide when you're talking about project design. You also want to make sure that you have that Form 9, the multi, see, I have it here. You want to make sure that you are referring to this form as, if it was me, I would fill this form out first before I started answering the questions in component 3, okay? Because this form makes you think about what your goals are, your objectives, what strategies and activities you're going to implement to meet those goals and objectives. It makes you think about what kind of data you're going to collect to see if the activities are working. And it also has you relate the budget to it. So to me, this form right here is the first thing that I would start filling out before I started answering component 3 question. So just to remind you, and for those who haven't been in office hours, there are certain performance goals that have been given to you. The first 3 have been given to you, and the first 3 objectives have been given to you. We've had questions come up about, do I have to use these objectives if it doesn't make sense for me to use those objectives? So for example, this first one, the percentage of regular program participants who will increase their math grade by half a letter grade or 5 percentage points from the first marking period to the last marking period of each academic year. Well, we've had questions come up. Well, we don't do grades at our school. We promote based on something else outside of a letter or a number grade. So what should we do? Well, you can change if that's the case. If you can't use this as your objective, then you can adjust it to something that you can use. But I want you to explain that, not necessarily here, but when you go into your narrative, when you go into component 3 in the application, you need to explain why you needed to adjust this, why you needed to change it to make it more, make it make sense at your site. But it does need to be something that's comparable. So maybe you're not looking at letter grades, but you're looking at some sort of formative assessment that you give those students every year. And you're going to look at we're just looking for improvement in whatever that formative assessment is. If you can stick to this though, please do. The reason why we gave you specific objectives that we wanted you to use is because when we look at the program, when we look at the entire state, we have to do an evaluation of our entire state's program. And that's really hard to do if everybody is measuring different things. So if you can do this, please go ahead and do what is here in the form. But if you do need to change it, given a reasoning why you have to change it, and then make that change. Do we have to use 5% on the objective? So it's I'm not. Oh, okay. So it says yes. So if this is feasible, like if at your school, if your program does have letter grades, then yes, we want you to stick with this. We want you to measure whether their grade went up by half a letter grade or 5 percentage points from the first marking period to the last marking period of the academic year. We want you to stick with this. But if you don't do letter grades, then you can make a change as needed. Just explain why you had to make that change. Okay. All right. So let me go back to the components. So in this first section, you're going to talk about your project design performance goals and objectives, and you need to explain those in this section. And the RFA does line out like what is a goal, what is an objective. Again, if you're using the ones that is provided to you, then please go ahead with those and do that. But if you need to change them for whatever reason, give an explanation of why you need to make that change. And this first section is the focus of this first section is on the required objectives to be attained under performance goals 1 through 3. So those are the ones that are provided for you, okay? Again, we had to split it up so that you would have more room. So you're just talking about what are your goals and what are your objectives in this section. All right. And the next one, you would fill in, this one is focused on the next 3 goals that you are supposed to actually come up with your own objectives for, your own goals and objectives. So it tells you to provide SMART objectives that fully address the following 3 performance goals. And so the first one, actually, I'm sorry, the goal is given to you, but you have to create your own objectives. So for example, students regularly participating in the program will demonstrate holistic health and wellness. So what are your objectives going to be? I would not just have one, I would have multiple. So you could talk about what you're going to do maybe for nutrition, what kind of physical activities you're going to do. Are you going to do some sort of lessons about anxiety or whatever you think falls under holistic health and wellness? You could put objectives here. The next one is talking about students will demonstrate civic responsibility and strengthen their community through service learning projects. Sorry, that says training, but it really should be learning. Same thing. What kind of service learning projects are you going to do with your students, and what are your goals? What are your objectives by doing those projects? What do you expect to see in the kids after they've done these service learning projects? And then the last one is families of students regularly participating in the program will be afforded opportunities for increased parent and family engagement. So in what ways are you going to bring in parents and family and engage them? It could be like after evening programs that you do for them, but also keep in mind you can actually have programs for family. So family of the students that you're serving. So you could have a GED class, you could have some sort of mommy to be class where you're teaching how to change diapers and that sort of thing. So those are allowed that you can have in there. I just saw that. I know I'm answering some questions because they're popping up. As far as the charts, I meant to ask and find that out, but I don't believe you can put a chart in. But hey, I can look real quick. Hold on real quick. Let's see if it'll let me do that. I can find out right now. So I'm going to copy. Oh, yep, it does. It does let you put in a chart. Okay. So you can enter a chart here for your answer. All right. Awesome. We just had to experiment with that. Okay. So, again, remember whatever you put in section 3 needs to match what is in your multi-year program design and performance form. Okay. In 3B, you're going to talk about the strategies and activities, which are related to your goals and objectives. Everything is tied together. So this is where you have, so on your form, because there's only so much space, and this is kind of a copy of the form right here, because there's only so much space. Now you can keep adding space to it. You can make that form could be 20 pages long if you want it to be, but really here is where you can take your time to explain what you're going to do, explain the activities, explain how they are, how they're evidence-based, how they're based upon the components of the measures of effectiveness, all of that. So that's all explained in the RFA. Please make sure you read that carefully before filling in these parts and talking about your strategies and objectives. Okay, and then again, 3C is project design, student and family support. This is where you're going to talk about the types of things you're going to, type of support you're going to provide to students and their families. This is where if you're going to provide snacks or food through the CMP program, you're going to talk about it here in 3C. Again, refer back to the actual RFA because it goes into much more detail than these bullets as to what is expected for each of the answers of these questions. Okay, I'm just going to put something here so I can submit it. All right, 3D is talking about evaluation strategies. What type of evaluations are you going to do to make sure that your activities are actually working? Again, it refers right back to that Form 9. You should be able to pull what you said you're going to use to evaluate your activities or your strategies and basically upload it here, make it look maybe a little bit prettier and of course, use complete sentences and all of that. But you will put that information here in 3D. Okay, so that covers component 3. Then you go to component 4, management. This is where you're going to talk about Any evidence of successful experience that you have, that your program, your entity has of doing an after-school program in the past. This is where you would want to talk about that. This is where you're going to talk about your job descriptions and qualifications of your key staff. Who are you going to hire for your program? In the past, we gave you a list of people that you could hire. I did not do that this time because I didn't want you to be forced into certain positions if you felt like other positions would be better. So the only positions you are forced to do is you have to have a program director that is over all of your sites. So if you are a sub-grantee, your program director will be in charge of all sites. If you only have one site, then you can, then that program director could also serve as the site coordinator if you want them to, but you may not want to do that because there is a lot of work involved in doing that. So you still might want to have a program director and a site coordinator. Every site that you have has to have a site coordinator. That is the boots on the ground, the person who is responsible for making sure that things are going well at the site, that teachers are doing what they're supposed to do, that the kids are behaving themselves, that there is learning going on, all of that. So think about it this way. If you were comparing your 21st century program to a school system, your program director would be like your superintendent of your program, and your site coordinator would be sort of like the principal of that school or of that site. They're the ones who are, located at that site, making sure things run well, and that program director is the one that makes sure all of the different sites are doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm not going to read each one of these, but you will fill in your component for response here. And again, it's 4B. It's broken down again. You're going to hear talk about challenges and obstacles. Again, I don't want to go through each one of these because I want there to be time for you guys to ask questions at the end. So I don't want to spend too much time on each one. But again, if you get confused about any of these questions, please feel free to reach out. Component 5 is about adequacy of resources and sustainability. This is where you're going to talk about your staffing of your teachers. Do keep this in mind. When we talk about management, we're talking about positions that would be considered administrative positions. This would be people like your site coordinator, your program director, your data entry person, your CFO or CSFO, your person who's going to do your financials. Those would all be considered, those would all fall under your job descriptions that go under administration positions. And keep in mind that you cannot, your maximum amount that you can spend on administration is 30% of the grant, okay? So that's administration and indirect cost. 30% of the grant can go towards those positions. But then down here, when you're talking about adequacy of resources and sustainability, this is where you're going to talk about other staffing like your teachers, your teacher aides. Those are not considered administrative positions. Those are going to be your positions that are going to be actually implementing those activities. So that's where you're going to be talking about those people. Okay, you're going to talk about the building that your site is in. What is its square footage? Does it have safety measures? You're going to talk about, the facilities, the equipment, supplies supplied by that facility. You're going to mention all of these different safety measures and plans. You don't have to go into great detail about these, but just kind of give us a brief description of each one. And then partner contributions. And so, for example, do you have financial or non-financial support? So do you have grocery stores that are donating snacks? Do you have another grant that is providing some of your funding? You would mention that here. Any kind of partnerships that you've got going on, that's where you would mention this. Okay. 5A, response here, it goes here. Again, 5B, we're continuing that conversation about resources and sustainability. You would enter in your information here. I don't want to spend too much time on each one. Then you've got your adequacy of resources and sustainability. This is a change from the RFA. There, at one time, the whole part of the federal requirements of this grant or one of the goals of the federal guidelines is for you to have sustainability and for you to have a plan of what will happen if you don't get a 21st century grant in the future. What happens at the end of the 5 years if you don't get another grant? How are you going to continue to do this program? So that's what it wants you to talk about here. There are a lot of states that actually decrease funding in the last 2 years of the grant, and I actually was considering doing that and had it in the RFA, but decided not to do that and went and took it out of the main body of the RFA, but forgot to take it out here. So it has been changed here in the eGAP application. And now, before it said something about how will costs be covered when in the last 2 years of the grant when funds decrease, that has been removed. So now it just asks you to put how costs will be covered when the grant funds cease. Okay, so what are you going to do to continue your program after this grant is over? Component 6, timeline of activities and project weekly schedule. It actually has a place for you to upload those, but these are the items that reviewer is going to be looking for. I will say the timeline of activities looks very similar to Form 9. I'm sorry that there's kind of some duplication between the two, but the focus here is when are you going to start the activities? The focus of Form 9 is what activities are you going to do? What are your goals? What are your activities? What are your evaluation strategies? The purpose of Form 7 is to talk about when those activities are going to start and who's going to be responsible for starting those activities and implementing them. So there is a little bit of duplication between the two forms, but they do each have their own purpose. And then the projected weekly schedule form, again, you're welcome to revise this however you want to. You can use the template that is provided for you, or you can use your own creation if it works better for you. But we do want to see what your weekly schedule will look like, and you will upload it here. Okay, and so just to upload those, you would just hit upload new. It says all data on this page will be saved. You want to continue, you're going to hit confirm. And then, I'm sorry. Evidently, I ran my mouse too long and it logged me out. Oh, I cannot believe that happened. Hold on, hopefully what I've done is still there. Give me a second. We were in Anniston. Okay, here's the draft I started. Let me go back to, I've got to pick the school, Ryland Elementary, application details. That's interesting. Okay. All right, well, it deleted a bunch of stuff that I had entered in, but that's okay. Hopefully you get kind of a gist of what happens. All right. Sorry about that. It should not have logged me out because I was entering things in there, but I don't know what happened there. Okay. Basically, we were on the last thing. Your budget summary was next, and this is where you're going to describe the items that are going to be in your budget and how they're related to your proposed activities, which are related to your proposed objectives, right? So again, if you go back to that Form 9, there is a place for you to list the items that you plan to purchase to make those activities happen, right? And so this is where you will describe that, but you also still have to go in and do your budget. So once you have completed this, you're going to hit save, and you will go back to your sections. Okay, so before I go to budget, let me see if I have any questions I need to answer right now. So give me just a second. Okay, so there's a question here. When will those of us who have filled out an eGAP access form be granted access? If you filled it out within the up to about 2 hours ago, then you should have access at this time. There had only been about 7 people who had gone in and filled it out, and some of those people already had access for whatever reason. Some did not, but those have been given. But if you've done it, if you've gone in and filled that form out in the last hour or two, then it may take us a day or so to get you into the system. Okay, the reason I do not see the application is because our school is not listed. What do we have to do to be listed? Okay, so thank you for sending in your intent to apply, but there is another document that you have to fill out in order to, if you've never applied for a grant before and your organization needs to be put into eGAP, you would have to go, I tried to put the link, it's at the very beginning up here of the chat, but I tried to put the link to the actual form in the chat, but it wouldn't let me do that. But instead, you can go to the 21st Century website. So let me drag that over here. So when you first go to the 21st Century website, which is www.alabama21cclc.org, you can click here to learn more about the grant competition, or you can just scroll down either way. And right here is a button that says eGAP access, or you can just scroll down. It just kind of takes you down. And right here is the form. So if you click on this link, it takes you to a form that asks for specific information. And once you've put your information into that form, we can create an account for you here at the ALSDE. Okay, do the participants in, for example, a GED class have to have a student attending the after-school program, or can it be a community member? It's supposed to be family members of students who attend the 21st Century program. So according to the guidance, you could serve their family members. So a sister, brother, cousin, I would say would work. But I don't know that it doesn't specifically say anything about someone who needs a GED that is in the community, but doesn't have any kind of ties to the students who are participating in the 21st Century program. I believe they have to somehow be a family member of the children that are participating in the program for you to do a GED class. Okay, I've already answered that one. Let's see. Okay. And LEA is asking, I have a question regarding priority 5. It reads like an or statement, not accessible to students and high quality to community, versus an LEA that has never had a grant before. Okay, so let me get out of this really quickly and go, well, here, I'm going to look in my RFA at priority 5. So it does say 5 bonus points will be awarded to applicants that demonstrate that the proposed activities are not accessible to students who would be served, would expand accessibility to high quality services that may be available in the community, or that propose to serve an eligible school or schools in an Alabama public school or district or an LEA that has not been served with the 21st Century subgrant. So that is an either or. If you are going to try to prove one of the first two, you need to be very explicit in how your program is going to expand services for students in your community. Most people, I believe, get this priority just because they don't currently have a 21st Century program in their area. But if you do have a 21st Century program in your area and you're going to state that your program is going to expand services that are available in the community and give students an opportunity to have those services, then I would expect you to explain in detail how you're expanding those services and be very specific on that one. Okay, where is this form? In the RAA forms. I'm not sure what form you're talking about, Marty, but all the forms for the RFA are on that website. So if I go back here, Here are all the forms that you need that you can download. They will also be in eGAP under related documents, but you can also pull them from here. I will say that the related documents in eGAP, we can only upload one type of each form, and in this one, there's multiple types, I believe. So, for example, you may want to handwrite on some of your forms. You might want to type into some of your forms, and so if you if the one that you want to use is not provided in eGAP, you should be able to pull it from here. Okay. Okay. If we are a CBO without access to student grades, can we come up with our own assessments? That's a fantastic question. And the answer is no. One of the biggest requirements of this grant is that you reach out to the LEA of the students that are being served, and that you have some sort of relationship with the LEA where you can get grades. Now, let me rephrase that for a second. For your own goals and objectives, yes, you could potentially develop your own assessment. We encourage you not to do that because we would hate for you to use up or waste, not waste, it wouldn't be a waste, but we would hate for you to use up 21st century time where the kids could be doing activities and enrichment, testing kids when they're already being tested during the school day at their schools. If you can find a way to use assessments that they're already being given during the school day and using that to judge whether your program is effective or not, that would be the ideal way to do it. Okay, so that's for the goals and objectives that you're developing yourself for that Form 9. However, another part of this grant is the GEPRA measures, and it talks about GEPRA. I'm not exactly sure what page, I'm sorry. But there is, when you get to the evaluation portion, actually, so it should be, somewhere around in the 20s. Should start talking about GEPRA measures. Here we go. It's on page 22. GEPRA stands for Government Performance and Results Act. This is something that we have to report to the federal government. And that is what you, if you look in the grant, it talks about how you have to purchase a program called Easy Reports. That is what the Easy Reports is for. It is for you to, it can be used for multiple things, and we plan to use it for more this coming year than we've ever used it for in the past. But one of the main things it's for is for our GEPRA measures. We have to report specific things to the federal government to show that our programs are effective. And those are items that you would have to get from the school, from the public school. So that is why it is so important for you to have that relationship with the public school. I can just go ahead and tell you right now that if you're a CBO and you apply and you have not developed that relationship with the LEA, then you may as well not even go to all this trouble. We're not going to even, go there, because you have to have access to the student data and information from their local public school. And even if you're planning on serving private schools, you still have to offer those services to public school students as well, because it is a community center. So you have to, if you have not already made contacts with the LEA, then you need to do that as fast as possible. Okay. All right. Let's see the details tab. Just missing students. Okay. If the LEA is CEP, which poverty percentage should be used? That's a great question. It doesn't specifically say in the guidelines as to what poverty percentage you would have to use if you're CEP. For those of you who may not know what CEP is, it's basically has something to do with child nutrition. And if a LEA decides to go full CEP, it marks everybody as being pretty much 100% poverty, which is not necessarily true. In my opinion, I would prefer for you to put the actual poverty percentage instead of the inflated CEP poverty percentage. But again, really, we only use that to determine if you're Title I eligible. So if you're high enough to get CEP, then more than likely you would be fine. Okay, if an LEA wants to provide summer services for 2025 and 2026, with both applications need to be completed. So if you apply for a summer only grant, then you get that grant for the next 5 years. And so if you apply for 21st Century Cohort 25 summer, then you will get funding as long as everything goes well. It's not taken away from you for some crazy reason. You should get funding for the 2025 summer, 2026, 2027, 2028, 2029, maybe 30. You would get it for the next 5 years, next 5 summers only, though. The only people that will have an issue here is if you are not part of cohorts. So the cohort that's currently about to expire, cohort 16, they have funding through September. And so they could run a summer program this summer, and then get their new grant funding at the beginning of the school year. The only issue is if you want to do an academic year or an all-year program, and you don't currently have a 21st Century grant, then you will need to find some other source for this summer and just do the year-long application, and get your funding starting in the fall. That was the only break in funding that we couldn't quite figure out how to address. And I don't want to waste time going into all the reasons why we had to do it that way, but I promise you there were reasons of why we had to do it that way. So I hope that answered your question. All right. Okay, we are a CBO and are writing to partner with several schools in an LEA. Would I list the LEA as a joint applicant or just provide the MOU? So more than likely you would list, it depends. It depends on how you want to submit your grant. If you are a CBO that is just going to serve schools, but you're not necessarily partnering with the LEA, and this gets really confusing, so I'm sorry it's so confusing. It's confusing to me still too as well. But let's say that more than likely you would want to partner with the LEA if possible, okay? The reasoning for that would be, especially if you plan to have your 21st Century site, your center actually located at that public school, then yes, I would definitely encourage you to do a partnership, because part of that partnership would be that the LEA is providing the facilities. They might be providing help with transportation, that sort of thing. So if you can, then yes, I would say that would be a really good way to go. But you don't have to. It could be that you're a CBO and you plan to serve students from multiple schools, but you're going to serve them at your own site, a private site, like at a church or at a private school. You wouldn't necessarily need to partner with the LEA other than having that agreement between you and the LEA that you are letting them know that you're planning on serving their kids and that you want to have that communication back and forth on what the kids need. What are their needs? What are they learning during the school day? How can we help them? And then again, when it comes time to get that data that you need, you would already have that partnership in place for that data. So there's all different ways that you can do this. But as a CBO, if you have questions, I don't think she's here with us today. I think she's on a trip, but Erica Rucker from TBI ran a CBO, and she's very well knowledge about those. And so I would suggest you reach out to her, and she probably can be better at helping you with that than I am. Okay. So I know I probably have missed a couple of questions, but I don't want us to run out of time. So before I have a chance to show you the budget portion. So I'm going to do that really quick. Hopefully I haven't been timed out again, but maybe I have. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to sections and go to the budget. Just want to show you how to enter that. Okay, because I only had one element, like one school listed, I was able to, let me just go back because I don't want to confuse anyone. So let me go back to sections. Okay, because Ryland Elementary is currently what's selected, I can just click budget here. But if I had more than one school, I could click the drop down menu and then go to the school that I wanted, and it would pull up budget and all of the things underneath it. But right now I just have the one, so I can just click on budget from here. Okay, you'll see what I'm talking about if you enter more than one. All right, so I'm going to go to budget, and then I'm going to go to modify all. Okay. All right, so to add an item into your budget, you're going to click this box here that says add budget line item. Okay, there is details in the RFA about how to do your budget, the types of things that are allowable and what is not allowable. And then just big, if you go to, if you go to page 44, well, actually, it starts on 43 of the RFA. It really details the budget and the codes and things like that that you have to use for different types of items. So I'm just going to show you a couple of those really quick. So I'm going to hit add item. So notice it automatically takes me to attendance services. You have a function code, which those are detailed. The function codes are detailed on page 44. And then you have object codes, which are detailed on page 45. Okay. So let's say the first item I'm going to enter is easy reports, because it's a mandatory thing that everybody has to do. And it actually does fall under attendance services, because this is the program I'm going to use to record my attendance. And you can use it for other things as well, but that's one of the main things I'm going to use it for. So the function code is already correct. It's attendance services, but I need to change my object code, because if I left it here, this object code is for salaries. So I'm going to click the down button. And because this is something I have to get a contract for and pay for with 21st Century Funds, it would be considered a purchase service. So I'm going to click purchase. I'm going to select purchase service. And then in the narrative description, I'm going to put easy reports. You can be more detailed. For now, I'm just going to simply put easy reports, but you could put, mandated easy reports for attendance, recording, or whatever you want to put. For now, I'm just going to put easy reports, and then I'm going to put the cost. You can leave the quantity at 1, and the total cost for that program per site is $900. Okay, it automatically calculates the total, and now I have a line item. Okay, let me go add something else. So I'm going to add another budget line item. This time I want to put in the salaries for the teachers that I'm going to hire for my program. Because this is an after-school program, I would go down to 9130, which is extended day or dependent care. A lot of your items will fall under this extended day, because that is what your after-school or summer program would be. There's also a 9130 summer. Okay, so if you are doing both an academic year program and a summer program, For the items that you're purchasing for the academic year, you'll do under 9130. And for the items you're purchasing specifically for the summer, you would do that under 9130 summer. Okay. But for now, I'm just going to pick items that I'm purchasing for just my regular after school program. So I'm gonna pick 9130. And I'm not purchasing anything, I'm paying salaries. So I'm going to leave this here at 010 through 199 salaries. And I'm going to say something like salary for lead teacher at $30 per hour or 12.5 hours per week for 36 weeks. And then I would put my total. So if that person is working $30 an hour times 1250 times 36, that person's salary would be $13,500. So I'm gonna put that there, my total there, and then down here in cost. Also need to put that I'm doing, it's just gonna be one lead teacher in this case. All right, $1350. Now, if that's all I plan to hire for salaries, I could just go ahead and put $1350 there and total it out. But more than likely, I'm going to have more than one teacher. So let's say I'm also hiring teacher. I'm hiring just 3 regular program teachers. 3 regular program teachers at, let's say we're going to pay them $25. See, $25 per hour for 12.5 hours per week for 36 weeks. Okay, if I add that up, then it's going to be, I've got 3 teachers, so 3 times 25 times 12.5 times 36 weeks. That's going to be a total of $33,750. And now I'm going to add, let's say that's all I'm going to do right now for those salaries. So I'm going to add those two together. So to my $33,750, I'm going to add my $13,500. So my total here for the cost for this line item is going to be $47,250. All right, and then create. Okay, so you just keep building this. Of course, you would expect to see these people listed under your activities. So that's how you fill that out. I don't want to spend too much time on that because we're running low on time, and I want people to be able to ask questions. But you would just continue to fill in your budget until you have completely spent all of your funds. Now, once you get the grant, your allocation will be loaded in there for you, but it's not going to be at this time. Right now, you're going to have to kind of keep track of the amount that you said, the amount that was calculated at the beginning that you would have, and you want to make sure that you've budgeted it all out. It's going to show that you have a negative balance because an allocation hasn't been entered, but that's okay. You just want to make sure that by the time you've entered in all of your different funding things that you're going to purchase for your programs, that you have spent all of your funds that you qualify or that you're eligible for. So I can't remember what it said on that first page. It was like 463,000 or whatever. You would just keep adding your expenses until you get to 463,000 and have budgeted out all of your funding. Okay. Then when you're done with that, you're going to, you can always go back to your total overall budget. If you notice here, I've got my attendance services. There's my $900. I've got under 9130, the 47,250 for those 2 employees. But I also need to make sure I put in their benefits. So there's many different types of expenses that you can have, and all that is detailed in the RFA. Okay. So once your budget is completed, see if there's anything else I have left out. Once you've done your budget overview will be done for you. It just basically shows you how much you have budgeted in your budget. It's just an overview of your budget you created. And you have completed your application details. Once you are done and you are ready to submit it, you have done everything, you think you are good and you don't need to do anything else, then you're going to change your status to draft completed. And then whoever is set up in your organization to approve your application will then go in and make those approvals. So like this is a school system. Okay, so it's telling me status cannot be changed. One or more validation errors exist. So I need to go look at my errors. Okay, so that's another thing is it will tell you if you have an error. Oh, I forgot. I'm so glad I did this. So the next thing you have to do, I apologize. I forgot about the related documents. Okay, so this is telling me that I was supposed to have at least one document uploaded for my related documents. So I accidentally skipped that section. So let me go back to the sections page. Here is related documents. So you click on here, related documents. And this is where you're going to upload all of your forms that you have filled out that you have to submit with your application. Right now, this is empty, but it will have the templates in it. At least it's empty in the test site. It may actually be, they may have been uploaded by now into the regular site. If not, again, you can pull the forms that you need from the 21st Century site until those have been uploaded. But once you have the documents filled out, so that would be form 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all of your forms, once they have been filled out, you will upload them here into the related documents. And it won't let you submit the application without those documents being uploaded. Okay. So once that has been done, then you should be able to go in and change your status. But if there's anything that they're missing or whatever, it should give you an error or a warning and not let you submit until that's been taken care of. And the way you submit, again, is you would go to your sections, go to here and change your status. So the person who's doing the application would change the status to draft completed. And then there may be other people in your organization that have to approve it before it is officially sent in to the 21st Century program to be scored. Okay. So that is pretty much the gist of eGAP. I want to go through and see if there was any other questions that you might have. Okay, I think I've answered. Okay, so again, we would not want you. Okay, so there was a question. My organization was looking to apply for summer program funding and after school year-long application funding. Do we have to complete 2 separate applications for this? We've never received funding before. You can't, one school can't have more than one application at a time, and that's one of the reasons why you can only do one or the other, unless you're planning on serving different schools. So if you want to do a year-long program, then you really need to wait and start your program at the beginning of the school year, because you can't do you can't have two grants for the same school at the same time with 21st Century. You would have to just do one or the other. Okay. All right. Someone asked again where the applications detail tab is. It's here. So anytime you get lost, always you can go back, you know, if I'm in applications detail and I'm lost and I want to go back to my original screen, you just hit save and go to sections and it will take you back to this area where you can find the application details or the budget or the related documents, whichever it is that you need. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to go through the questions I did answer and didn't answer. So for those of you, while I'm trying to find new questions, for those of you who may have joined us late, I just want to make sure I reiterate this because I don't want people filling in the wrong application. When you go to, when you go into eGAP and you search for funding applications, when you first get started, it's going to show 21st Century Cohort 16, 17, and 25 under the year 2025, okay? If you are applying for summer-only programs, you only want funding for the summer for the next 5 years, starting this coming summer, then you need to fill out this one, 21st Century Cohort 25 Summer, okay? Even though the RFA is called Cohort 26, because the funding is technically going to start in FY25 or fiscal year 25, we are actually going to call it Cohort 25 Summer. It's still, the RFA for 26 still applies to it, but that's what we're going to call it. If you are planning on doing an academic year program or a year-long program, then you would need to click on fiscal year and you would need to go to 2026. This is the test site, so it's not showing 2026 yet, but in the regular eGAP, it should show, or you should have the ability to change it to 2026. And when you do that, you would have the ability to click on 21st Century. Here, let me just go ahead and show you. Let me go to the regular site, sorry. So nervous about people getting confused about this. So I just want to make sure everybody understands. Now, again, I don't know, this is, I have admin privileges, so I don't know if you are able to see everybody's funding applications the way I can. But when I go into funding applications, notice here, this is fiscal year 2025, and it has 21st Century Cohort 25 Summer listed. But if I go to 2026, it allows me to do it in the regular site. If I click on 2026, now it has 21st Century Cohort 26 listed. And that's the one I would need to fill out if I'm planning on doing the whole year program or the academic only year program. Okay. Okay. So yes, make sure that you're saving. The sessions will time you. There's a question about, I guess we need to make sure we're saving throughout while we're building our application. Yes. It is a good idea to continue to save. I thought as long as you were typing something in that it wouldn't time you out, but evidently that was wrong. I'm not used to actually filling in the application. I'm used to just being the one who goes in and reviews it. So yes, as you're going through the application, it will time out after an hour. So you just want to make sure that you go in and save the work that you've done, you know, every 30 minutes or so that you don't lose something that you've already done. Okay, it says we have eGAP, we just cannot see the application on eGAP. Okay. So hopefully, maybe, I'm not sure why you wouldn't be able to see it if you have an eGAP account. Again, you would go to search, go to funding applications, and then pick which application you want to do. So like for this one, cohort 26, I'm gonna choose that. I'm gonna hit search, and then it pulls up all the organizations that could potentially do a cohort 26 application. I'm gonna find my application name in there. Notice that this is 20 records displaying 1 through 20. There definitely should be more than that listed, so I will have to check into that. Because it should have listed a name for everybody who has an account. So let me check into that. It may just be that they're not finished uploading everything yet. So I will check into that very shortly, because it should list all of the different LEAs and CBOs here as having the ability to apply. So let me check into that. Give us a day or so before you go in and start doing anything with it. Okay. Okay, so there's a question that says, I'm one of several schools applying for a grant under Jackson County. We have multiple grant writers. Do we need to share eGAP access and add multiple grant applications, or can each grant writer have their own access? So that depends on how you're doing your application. If your fiscal agent, or if your main subgrantee is going to be Jackson County, then you would need to do one subgrantee, and then fill out, you would need to give access to the different grant writers to that document, so they could go in and enter in their school's information. So if that's how you're doing it, if the main subgrantee is Jackson County and you're going to have multiple sites under Jackson County, then Jackson County would need to go in and create the school names under that one site. Okay. Let me go back to the testing site. So I'm back on the testing site. So in other words, if I click on cohort 25 summer, I do a search. So I've got Anniston typed here, but let's say I have Jackson. Okay, Jackson County, cohort 25 summer. I'm going to click here, and then I would go in and enter. Oh, wait, at first you have to start a draft. So I would hit draft started, confirm. And then I could go in and enter each school's name, add grant application for each school. And then you would give each of those grant writers access to your grant application, so they can go in and type that information in. The other option is if you're making each school apply for their own grant on their own, and the LEA is not going to be the subgrantee, but the school is going to be the subgrantee, then they can they would have to go in and create their own accounts and enter it in that way. Okay. All right. Where do I find a UEI and vendor ID number? Okay, so any kind of organization, you get the UEI number from the federal government. There's instructions in the RFA of where to go to get your UEI number. It's basically can't think off the top of my head where it is, but it does talk in here about the UEI number and where you can go to get it. I want to say it's like sam.gov, but it does say in here where to go get it. If let me get some other answers, other questions answered, and I can go back and try to find that in a moment. Your vendor ID number, that is through Alabama Buys or STARS. If you've never had any kind of contract with Alabama, you've never had to receive any funding through Alabama, then you may not have that. But if you ever have, then you should already be in the system. It used to be called STARS, STAARS, and now it's called Alabama Buys. It's the same thing. But in order for the State Department of Education to pay you or to reimburse you for your funds, you have to have a vendor ID number through Alabama Buys. So if you don't have that, then you need to go to the
Miss
Alabama Buys
Harris,
website. Sorry,
did Kendall have his phone out?
hold on just a second. Some people have unmuted themselves, so let me stop sharing my screen really quick and work on that. Okay. All right. Okay, so vendor ID number, you get that from Alabama Buys. You should be able to look that up on the internet. Just type in Alabama Buys, and there's instructions on their website of how to get a vendor number. If you still have problems, then you can reach out to me, and I can send you instructions of how to do that. That needs to be done like right away, though, because it does take quite a bit of time to actually get it. Especially, they're just very picky. So it's really easy for it to be sent back for just small, minor things. And so it's something that you want to go ahead and do as soon as possible. Okay. So if we're applying for summer only, are we still required to reach out to the LEA to get grades from previous school year to reinforce and get them ready for upcoming school year? Yes, you still have to reach out to the LEA. You do. Because there is still data that LEA is going to have to provide to you no matter what. They also, the LEA is going to have to go in and mark those students as being 21st century students in Power School so that other data can be pulled on those students. And so you have to have that relationship with the LEA. I cannot reiterate that enough. No matter what your entity is, you are going to have some sort of relationship with the LEA that serves those students. Can you detail any other required budget items other than easy reports, program director, and site coordinator? Required. You are required to pay for professional development for your staff. The program director and site coordinators are required to go to specific professional development throughout the year. They have to go to the mega conference with this RFA, and the ACEA conference will also be a required conference for them to go to. So that is another requirement. The travel and per diem and registration fees for those conferences need to be included in your budget. I'm trying to think what else. Of course, you're going to have teachers, you're going to have materials and supplies. Can't think of anything else that's required right this second, but if it comes to me, I will let you know. But again, read the RFA. It does talk in there about that. It also, the RFA talks about your caps on what you can spend on different types of expenditures. So that is actually starts on page 44. So for example, you can only spend up to 10% of the grant award on instructional staff development services. So that's for your professional development. Oh, that's the other thing, an external evaluator. I knew there was something I was forgetting. Everybody has to hire an external evaluator to do their program evaluation. They work throughout the year and they create a end of year report, and you can pay them up to 3% of the grant award. However, if you are awarded this, that was the rule when the awards, like the most amount was $200,000. Now that the amount can go up to 520,000 technically, we would not suggest you paying them that full 3%. unless you really could justify doing so. $6,000 should be plenty. That would be 3% of the 200,000. So don't just automatically give them 3% of the grant award without some sort of justification as why they would need that extra funding. Okay. Then you've got extended day, you've got your transportation. Transportation costs may not exceed 30% of the grant award. And then your administrative and indirect costs together cannot exceed 30% of the grant award. Is there an Excel budget template that allows us to develop the budget itself outside of the eGAP platform before inputting the data into eGAP? No, I don't have that. I am sorry, we do not have that, but that's a great idea for the future. Okay. Am I to understand correctly that budgets must be entered by school instead of by service delivery site? For example, we plan to serve students from 3 schools at 1 CBO site. If you're having 1 site, then you'll have 1 grant, and the budget would be created for that 1 site, no matter how many schools they have. So it's really you're creating a budget for each site that you plan to have, each community center site that you plan to have. So if you were going to serve 3 schools at 1 site, then you would only create 1 grant for that 1 site and have 1 budget for that 1 grant. Okay, so it says the CBO we are collaborating with normally offers tutoring services in their programming for a fee. In a joint application, would the operational costs for these services have to be covered under the administrative portion of the budget? Not sure if I understand what is being asked. Okay, so first of all, there's many aspects to that question. So first of all, if you're collaborating with a CBO, if you're an LEA and you're submitting a joint application with a CBO, and that CBO already offers tutoring services, then you would need to mention that in question, see which one it was. Sorry, trying to find it really quick. I guess at the beginning, but you would need to mention that in the question that asks about, do you already have an existing after-school program that goes on? You could now say that instead of charging a fee for those program services, you're going to use 21st century funds, because you cannot charge a fee if 21st century funds are involved. So, so the operational costs for those services, for those tutoring services, would not necessarily be covered under administrative. It just depends on what you're referring to. So if you're referring to paying the tutors themselves, then that would be not necessarily administrative costs. That would be just regular, that would come out of your regular budget for tutors. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or not. Okay. The RFA says job descriptions are required for all grant-funded personnel, but the rubric seems to indicate that only the program director and site coordinator are required. Can I please clarify? So yes, job descriptions are required for anybody you plan to hire. We just provide you a rubric for the program director and site coordinator, but not the other ones. You would have to create your own job description for any other positions you plan to hire for. So we just provide those 2 for you as an example, basically. They're a template that you can use. You don't have to use those descriptions, but those are provided for you. But yes, any personnel you plan to hire, that you plan to spend 21st century funds on, you need to provide a job description for those people saying what it is that they're doing, what their qualifications will need to be, that sort of thing. For cohort 16, we cannot upload without the additional documents. Is that the same for cohort 26? Yes, because I tried to do it a minute ago and it wouldn't work. So yes, you have to upload. When you say additional documents, though, for the documents that are listed under related documents at the top, those have to be uploaded before you submit. But then there's some additional documents underneath that are optional. You do not have to have those uploaded before you submit. Okay. What if we want to serve the schools in the summers only as a CBO and then partner with schools for after-school services? Should we wait or start now? Again, one school cannot be served with multiple 21st century grants. So you would need to pick which one you want to do. You can either serve that school as a summer program only, or you can wait and serve that school as an academic year or a year-long program starting in the fall. But you can't do both. So you would have to pick one or the other. Okay, so it says, please repeat the information about selecting funding application cohort summer 25 and cohort 26. Okay, so again, the RFA gives you two options of grants you can apply for with this RFA. You can apply for a summer only grant that would actually start this coming summer, and the funds would be made available to you at the beginning of May. Hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, funds would be available at the beginning of May. Because the funds would be available in the FY 25 fiscal year, we had to change the name for that application to cohort summer 25 or cohort 25 summer, because we are now naming our cohorts based off the year that their funding starts. So that's why it's called cohort summer 25. You only fill that application out if you're only applying for summer programs for the next 5 years, okay? If you are wanting to offer after-school programs during the school year only, or during the school year and the summer, then you need to fill out the application under fiscal year 2026 and fill out the application that says cohort 21st century. It'll say 21st CCLC or 21st century, dash cohort 26. And that's the one you would need to fill out if you plan to start your program in the fall for next school year. Okay. Okay. So this comes up quite frequently about MOUs. So it says, if one of the activities involves contracting for services and the individual or organization is not specified in the memorandum of understanding, should we still upload the document with only the funding details and requested signatures? No. So for the application's purposes, we understand that there may be different circumstances where you're not ready to upload the MOU quite yet. It could be that you work for an LEA who doesn't feel comfortable with you creating a contract with an organization or an entity before you actually have the 21st century funds. It could be that the activity that you're wanting to contract for is not going to be needed until a year from now. Like it maybe you're hiring somebody to come in and do a community garden, and that won't even need to be needed until next spring. And so you're not ready to do an MOU for that yet. If that's the case, then you do not have to upload the MOU at this time. You can go ahead and put the activities into your budget and into your descriptions for your application. What will happen is if you do get the grant, when it comes, when it's been announced that you did get the grant, then we at the ALSDE will go through your budget and go through it for any changes that need to be made. It could be that maybe you had something in your budget that wasn't allowable, but it wasn't anything major enough for you not to get the grant, right? It was just something that you have in there, or maybe you have it coded wrong. Or it could be a situation like this, where you say that you're going to hire someone to come in and do a service, but you don't have an MOU uploaded for them yet. What we're going to do is either say, okay, you need to go ahead and get that MOU uploaded if it's something that's going to begin right away. Once that is done and we have reviewed it, then we can approve your application. Or if you're not ready to upload the MOU yet, for whatever reason, then we'll probably ask you to move those funds from purchase services over to materials and supplies until you are ready to hire that person and can get an MOU. And then when that time comes, you'll submit a budget revision, you'll upload the MOU for us to review, you'll move the funds back over into purchase services and explain what the service is for, and then we can approve it there. But basically, anytime that you are going to hire for services with 21st Century Funds, there needs to be an MOU completed and we need to be able to review it. So that's the reasoning for that. But yes, you can go ahead and for the application purposes, you can go ahead and put it in your budget without the MOU for now. Just understand that if you get the award, you will have to submit that MOU before you can actually start paying for those services whenever that time comes. Do we need to have a new grant name for this application, or can we use the Cohort 16 name? You can use the Cohort 16 name if you would like, as long as it's got the 21st century in it, but you can also change it if you prefer. It's up to you. Can 4K students be serviced in this grant? So I'm not sure if that's asking, I'm assuming that's pre-K. 4-year-olds, yes, they can, as long as they live in an attendance area of those Title I schools. So the guidance does say that you can serve pre-K students from that community that are going to eventually be going into the schools that you are serving. So that is fine for you to serve those students. You just need to make sure that you are actually providing programming that is getting those kids ready for kindergarten or first grade, not just a babysitting service. This is not, 21st century. It needs to have enrichment. It needs to have activities. And so you would need to provide that same enrichment and activities for the pre-K kids as you do for the older ones. Okay, please explain a little about the inventory of supplies and materials process. So you are expected, if you get the grant, you are expected to keep an inventory at your site of all the materials and supplies that you purchase with 21st Century Funds. Of course, not necessarily items that are consumables, but of course, anything that is above a certain price would need to be labeled as 21st century, and you would need to keep inventory of those items. All right, administrative costs and what other costs combined must not exceed 30% of the grant. Okay, so the other thing that is supposed to be combined with admin costs is indirect cost. So if you are charging indirect costs to the grant, that is also supposed to be part of your 30%. Also, we haven't been upholding this in the past, but we probably will in the future because it's what we do for all of our other grant programs. But really, technically, professional development for administrators should also be considered administrative costs and come out of your admin costs. we have, like, again, we have not been enforcing that in the past, but very well may in the future, because technically would be considered an administrative cost. Also, if, let's say you're a CBO and you have to rent office space for your program director, the rental of that space could come out of administrative cost. It could be part of your indirect costs, or it could also be charged to the grant. And that would also be considered administrative cost if you're going to do that. So that would be part of your 30%. Trying to think if there's anything else I can think of. But pretty much it would be mainly the salaries and the benefits of those people who are administrating the grant, which would be your program director, your site coordinators, any kind of data entry person or financial person that you hire. Those would all be considered administrative costs. Is there a template for the budget? No, I'm sorry, there is not a template for the budget. Okay. Okay. So in reference to the previous question I had about a joint application, I meant that the CBO normally charges a fee to provide services. If we did a joint application, would that fee now be considered an operational cost because they are a joint applicant? It just depends on what is considered, on what you're considering that fee to be for. If you mean that the CBO charged your school a fee to have people come in and provide those after school services, then yes, that would now be operational costs, because since you're a joint applicant, whoever you have coming in to provide those services would be paid like an employee of the grant, and it would be considered salaries. And those would be operational costs. If you're talking about a fee to the students or to the families for the services, you could not do that anymore. They would have to stop doing that in order for them to be part of your grant. You cannot, if you're doing a 21st century grant, you cannot charge families any kind of fee for anything. Not for actual services, not to go on field trips, not for snacks, nothing. You cannot charge any kind of fees if it's a 21st century program. Okay, when we're looking at the staffing and job descriptions, will the assistant teachers, student helpers, or college helpers count in the student-teacher ratio? For example, can I budget to have one teacher and one teacher assistant per 1:12 ratio? So the 1:12 ratio in this particular RFA is a suggestion or an encouragement, but it is not a steadfast rule. You can, if you feel like you need to have more teachers, then you can. On top of that 1:12 ratio, yes, you could have a teacher and a teacher assistant for that 1:12. However, what I would like to see, what I often see in 21st century programs is 95% of the 21st century funds going towards salaries, and there not being anything remaining to do enrichment activities. I would much rather, instead of, I mean, of course, I want you to hire the staff that's needed to do the job, right? That is very important. We definitely, that's for safety reasons and for many other reasons. But if you've got enough people to do the job, I would much rather you see you use extra funding to purchase things for enrichment activities, like make those big ticket purchases, like a 3D printer, or having, a company come in and do something really great with the kids that you're contracting with that company to do. Like, for example, in Gadsden, we just recently went to a great red carpet event where they actually had a production company come in. There she is. Hey, Janie. She had a production company come in, I
Hi.
think, out of Atlanta and work with the kids to help them write their own songs and produce their own music videos. And then they did this amazing event for the parents after that. There was a lot. I'm sure there was a good chunk of cost involved in that, but I would much rather you use the funds for that if you've already got plenty of staffing. Um, so whatever you feel is needed for your program. Okay, how do we know which function codes are admin versus not? That is detailed, I think, again, on page 44. Admin codes are 6,000 through 699. So anything that falls under admin would be function code 6,000 through 699. Okay. All right, any other questions? We've gone 30 minutes over. All right. Kristen, if you need to unmute yourself, you're welcome to. Okay, there's a question. This is my first time applying. Can we include a nutritionist in the budget? Yes, as long as you have a reason to do so. If it's part of your program that you're going to have lessons on nutrition, then yes, you could definitely, as long as you can justify the cost and how it's going to benefit your students, then yes, and you have the budget to do so, then yes, you could have a nutritionist in your budget. Okay. Okay, so she just mentioned they feed their kids with their after school program. So yes, if you want to provide snacks or meals for your students, then we highly encourage you to reach out to the child nutrition program to see what programs are available to you to provide those snacks and meals. That needs to be your first step if you want to provide those. You can provide food if you're doing a nutrition activity, but you need to make sure that you really are truly doing a nutrition activity where there's a lesson plan and all that. And that might get kind of tedious to do that every single day. So the best way to do that is to go through your child nutrition program. And if you don't know who to contact, it would be on the Alabama State Department of Education website. There's also some links in the RFA to child nutrition. Okay, so another question about inventory. How will inventory need to be done? You just have, I think we have a template inventory form that we give you to fill out, and you just keep record of your inventory on site. And then when we have technical, our technical assistants or our TA people come to visit you, they will often check that inventory just to make sure that you're keeping up with it the way you're supposed to be. It's also something that we would check for during compliance monitoring. That's also part of the grant, is you'll be, if you do get the grant, you'll go through compliance monitoring at least once during the grant cycle. And so that would be another thing we would check for, but it's just kept at your school. You can keep it on paper, you can keep it on a computer program. I don't think we mandate any specific way of how you have to keep your inventory, just whatever works best for you as long as you have it. Any other questions? So I need to check. Okay, so Kristen, I need to check into exactly how that works. So I'm assuming that, okay, so the question is, I don't understand how to get my school added into eGAP. I have full access to eGAP given to me by my district. And you completed the form that was linked. Will that load my school into the grant portion of eGAP? So that's a great question. I need to find out how that works. Because if you're submitting an app, typically if you're submitting an application, under an LEA, I'm trying to think. So this might be the reason why in the past we've had a rule that one LEA could not be served by more than one grant. So let me check into how that exactly would need to work, because in the past we haven't allowed that, but I spoke with the federal government to see if that was a federal rule, and it's not. Now we don't want one school to be served by multiple 21st century programs, but an LEA could be served by multiple 21st century programs, especially a larger LEA. So let me find out how exactly that will work. Kristen Donald. So Kristen, if you wouldn't mind reaching out to me by email and just remind me about that, I will try to find out an answer for you and get that back to you as soon as possible. And then I'll make sure to put it into the Q&A for everyone else, the Q&A document, once I find out an answer of how that's exactly going to work. That's a great question, but I'll find out the answer like immediately. How often is compliance monitoring for 21st century? So if you do things the right way, it'll just be one time. We are supposed to do compliance monitoring every 5 years, but in the past for 21st century, we've always had three. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. We have to do compliance monitoring at least once during your grant program, according to the feds. So in the past, when when the grants were for 3 years, then you would have to do it every 3 years, or you would have, you would be monitored at some point during that 3-year period. But now that the grant is going to be for 5 years, you would more than likely be monitored only once during that 5-year period. Now, if you do horrendous on that monitoring, or you don't turn in any of your documentation, you don't do what you're supposed to do, or if you're struggling and you are considered a high risk site, then you may have to do monitoring more than once. So we may have you do monitoring 1 year and then see that you're having issues and do monitoring again the next. So we can do monitoring every year if we want to, but typically, as long as things are going well, we would just monitor you one time. And that monitoring schedule, now that we are going to a 5-year grant, will coincide with the district's with the regular ALSDE 5-year schedule, for those who can. The only ones that won't apply to is if it's the first year of your grant. We're not going to monitor anyone in the first year of the grant. And so if your LEA is being monitored in your first year of your grant, then we will move your monitoring to probably year 2 instead of doing it the first year. Okay. Sorry, Kristen. Yeah, let me find out exactly how we need to handle that when you're writing a grant on behalf of a school and not the LEA. Any other questions? All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the recording for today, but if you have any other questions about eGAP or about the grant at all, please do not hesitate to reach out to the 21st Century email, general email that is on the very first page of the RFA, and ask questions there. Our next meeting, let me see, our next office hours, we highly encourage you, if you haven't been coming to the office hours, I highly encourage you to come to those or watch the recordings of the ones that you might have missed in the past. There's really good information in there. And then also be sure to check out the Q&A document. I've been trying to put questions that are asked into that document, at least the ones that are asked via email throughout the week. So make sure you check that out as well. Our next office hours is going to be on February the 10th from 3:30 to 4:30 at the same WebEx location. So we hope to see you there. And I'm going to go ahead and stop today's recording. Hope you all are doing well and good luck on the grant.